Morning, everyone. Starting today with a couple of polls. First, CBC News is reporting a majority of Canadians against accepting more refugees. Polls suggest 76% of respondents say Canada should do more to encourage skilled labor immigration. Okay, so they start off with saying that it shows Canadians are divided on immigration. I still haven't found the division. I've read this article. I haven't found the division. Most people agree that what we're doing is not the direction we should be going. So it's interesting that CBC is saying Canadians are divided. Okay, here we go. A pre-election survey conducted for CBC News suggests Canadians are divided on immigration, with clear limits on the kinds of migration they find acceptable. The government groups immigrants into three categories: economic, which are skilled workers and business people, along with their partners and dependents; family reunification; and refugees, or those admitted under humanitarian or compassionate grounds. More than three-quarters, 76% of respondents to a survey by Public Square Research and Maru Blue agree that Canada should do more to encourage skilled laborers to immigrate to the country, while 57% said Canada should not be accepting more refugees. The results come as no surprise to immigration experts and advocates who point to a negative shift in tone on migration around the world, especially when it comes to refugees. They say the trend is stoked by media coverage in Canada of asylum seekers crossing the country's borders with the U.S. Drastic decline in welcoming of refugees. One organization in Manitoba says it is seeing this shift firsthand. Quote, "There's been a drastic decline in the acceptance and the welcoming specifically of refugees," said Dorota B., Executive Director of the Immigration and Refugee Community Organization of Manitoba. Her family came as privately sponsored refugees to Canada nearly 3 decades ago. I'm going to scroll down. The survey polled 4,500 adults online from among those who registered with the Maru Voice panel. Other findings include 64% of respondents said illegal immigration is becoming a serious problem. 56% said that accepting too many immigrants will change Canada. 24% of respondents said too many immigrants are visible minorities. And so it's interesting. I'm going to scroll down again. There is a chance that some parties will try to get some traction out of activating those fears and out of presenting themselves as being more able to respond to that. For example, by being tougher at the border, said Paquette. I scroll down again. During a pre-election speech on immigration policy in May, Conservative leader Andrew Scheer said his party would look at immigration levels annually with an emphasis on economic immigration. The NDP's election platform also states that its immigration policies and levels would address labor force needs and that it would fix the backlog in the refugee system. The Green Party says it would also address the labor shortages, but would make substantial changes to the immigration system, including adding a category for environmental refugees and slowing down the deportation process. So that's where the four other parties sit, and the People's Party says a hard cap of 250,000 people coming into Canada per year or less. And Mr. Bernier has been consistent and clear about that. Whereas each one of these leaders has not given a number, and they say, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. So, and the reason I skipped over so much of this article is because while the article notes that public opinion is on the side of removing or stopping immigrants, refugees, etc., and in favor of economic immigrants, people who have connections, have jobs, etc., have money coming in, that's very clear. All of this is talking about why those things are happening. Like, why the shift? Maybe they don't understand why people came here as refugees. Maybe they don't understand the dangers we're fleeing, etc. So it's very apologist. It's very it felt propaganda-ish even for me to read it. So I wanted to skip over it. I didn't want to mention it because it felt disingenuous for me to report it, because it feels disingenuous on the page, because it's very clear that Canadians are not divided on immigration. Canadians want to stop footing the bill for random people walking across the border into Canada and then right into a hotel room. I've seen homeless on streets in my town. Like, this is ridiculous. So moving on to the second poll. CBC again, and this was posted yesterday, July 2nd. Despite a strong economy, cost of living still top of mind for Canadians. You Canadians, why are you worried about economy? Well, we're gonna, or the cost of living. Why are you worried about the cost of living? The economy's great. Don't worry about the economy. Cost of living, just pay your taxes, please. economic. Back to the article. Nuance is a lousy thing to talk about. It's easy enough for politicians to talk up a roaring economy. In its own way, it's easy to say what you do when the economy is in the tank. But a patchwork of mostly good and some bad is harder to pitch. And right now, Canada's economy is doing okay. Maybe not great, but certainly not bad. That's not exactly the kind of quote to put on posters. I scroll down. On a longer scale, the last 3 or 4 years, Antunes said the Canadian economy has, quote, done quite well. And while it may sometimes be hard for Canadians to see that bigger picture, economists say the country's economic indicators are relatively strong. I scroll down again. And yet, a new poll commissioned for CBC News highlights Canadians' economic anxiety, with 32% of respondents saying that the cost of living is the thing that they are most worried about. I would agree with that because I've been to a grocery store and I'm not an economist. Back to the article. The broader economy is performing well, but many Canadians still struggle. Housing affordability is still at crisis levels in Toronto and Vancouver and everywhere else. Energy prices remain stubbornly low, and childcare costs weigh heavily on families. What's more, concern about the cost of living ranked as the top worry for every segment of Canadians polled. And I'm not going to list every segment because it's ridiculously divisive. Are you Canadian? You were included. Back to the article. Still, an honest accounting of the data shows that the negative perception doesn't quite match their economic reality. When asked to rank their top 3 most important election issues, a full 35% of Canadians polled listed jobs in the economy, but Canada has been posting record job creation. The Canadian economy added 27,000 jobs in May, and in April, a stunning 106,500 jobs were added. In all, nearly 500,000 jobs were added over the past 12 months. I'm not going to get into the Swiss cheese of these numbers, but I've seen multiple articles talking about the fact that these numbers have been massaged, to put it mildly. So I just want to point that out. I'm not going to get into that because that'll take me another 15 minutes, and I just don't think we have that time, dear viewer. But be aware, and if people are interested, I'll do a video talking about the job numbers and what they're doing to inflate them or make them look better. Essentially, it's part-time jobs replacing full-time jobs, right? And people who have to work for themselves. Oh, see, I'm getting into this. People who have to work for themselves and they say, yeah, I'm employed because I'm doing like these 5 things on the internet, but I'm getting by, right? I don't have benefits, right? And I'm not describing myself. I'm just saying that there are people out there who are dealing with that, and it's a lot of people. It's affecting the job numbers. So anyway, back to the article and my point. Wage growth is also coming in above inflation, meaning Canadians are seeing their wages rise faster than the cost of the things we buy, from food to gasoline. What's more, many of the jobs being added are high-paying tech and financial services jobs. If you look at the period over the last decade or so, oh, that's why. I was looking at the last 3 or 4 years when at the beginning of the article, they said they were looking at the last 3 or 4 years. Anyway, decade or so. We've seen this kind of restructuring away from high-paid manufacturing jobs. We've seen almost as many jobs created in this other segment of the economy, the professional services segment, said Antunes. The CBC poll also found that 54% of respondents worry that accepting too many immigrants would change Canada, but economists say that the change is much needed, specifically on the jobs front. What? My eyebrows went up at that. I was like, interesting. 54%, a strong majority of Canadians, responded that accepting too many immigrants would change Canada. But economists say, no, we need that change, especially on the job front. And then here's the quote. Let's just take a look at where labor markets are today, said Antunes. We have an unemployment rate that's 5.4%. According to some estimates, that's as low as it can get. Canada, he said, is essentially at rock bottom on the employment rate. The Conference Board of Canada recently released a report highlighting the need for more immigration. There's no doubt that immigration will contribute to the labor force, said Antunes. When you talk to employers in many parts of the country, they're desperate to find skilled and less skilled workers, and immigration is going to be a big part of solving that gap. So 54% of Canadians say, or respondents to this poll say, that they're worried about changing Canada. But economists say, don't worry about it. The job market needs it. So be quiet, polls. Who needs you? Back to the article. The kind of disconnect appears throughout perceptions around the economy, whether it's jobs, trade wars. Maybe I've not said what the disconnect is. Oh yeah, they're going to be a big part of solving that gap. Okay, that kind of disconnect appears throughout the perceptions around the economy, whether it's jobs, trade wars, exports, or oil prices. Exacerbating that is the fact that Canada isn't just one singular economy, said Donald. Rather, it's a sort of patchwork of regional and sector-based economies. The economy is and feels different depending on which province you're in, she said. We have the energy patch. We have urban areas that are being driven predominantly by housing activity. And then we have other key cities and rural areas that are swayed by neither of those two factors. Economic anxiety also becomes amplified by global oil prices and international trade tensions. Canada alone doesn't have much influence in changing those, but both feed into the notion that the economy is struggling no matter what the data says. But if you look past the anecdotal evidence, a hard feat for anyone, no doubt, you'll find an economy performing pretty well. And in a world full of turmoil and trouble, pretty well is pretty good. Wow. Do you feel better? Okay. Get ready to not feel better. Here is an article posted December 4th, 2018. It says your grocery bill could rise 3.5% in 2019. Study predicts. Oh, they were right. They were right. And here is the April 17th article. It says higher food prices help push Canada inflation rate up to 1.9% in March. Things are increasing, and I'm not going to go through the whole articles here, but apples in April were up by 13%, and I eat an apple a day. I hear it keeps the doctor something. And oranges are up 8.57. It's incredible. These prices mean that your food bill necessarily increases. And it's not just $1 or $2 per item, and it's not just 1 or 2 items. It's a lot of the core items, right? So when your grocery bill goes from $100 to feed 4 people, $100 a week to feed 4 people, to $200 a week to feed 4 people, plus carbon taxes, that's a problem, right? And we are watching this steady march up. Steady march up. This was April. This is July. Canadian food prices are accelerating. They're like Lightning McQueen, right? Blame weather and Donald Trump, but don't blame the carbon tax, Huffington Post. Don't mention that pesky carbon tax that was implemented by Justin Trudeau. No, not at all. That has nothing to do with it. It's Donald Trump's fault, that mean man in the United States White House. Interesting stuff. I've looked at this before as well, but I wanted to show apples are up 22% here, right? This is incredibly fast increase in food and fresh vegetables. Not only is it concerning because I like eating, but it's concerning because that money is no longer going to savings. This is July 1st. This is Canadians worried about soaring food prices. More articles being published about this. So it's incredible that it's up to date. And it's not just the food prices. It's not just the food prices. Here's Vancouver. Gas in Vancouver, this is from April, hovers above $1.70 a liter. Is this what the rest of Canada is in for? Right now we're at $1.24 where I live. Happy Canada Day weekend, everybody. You can afford that carbon tax, can't you? Here's Alberta natural gas producers discuss output cuts as prices sag. And this is a few hours ago, 5 hours ago, July 2nd. No, this was July 3rd, I guess. So updated a few hours ago, posted yesterday. So here's what's happening. Because we can't get our oil to Tidewater and we have to rely on American refineries, we have to sell our oil at a discount because it's dirty. It's the bitumen, right? It's the Alberta heavy crude, I think. I'm not an oil guy, so I don't know. But what's happening is we have to sell our oil at a discount. So we're selling our oil between $10 and $20 when the price for oil is between $50 and $60 on the national stage. So we're handing the United States a whole bunch of money because they say they'll take the oil for cheap and they'll refine it and sell it at full price. You understand what's happening? So we're losing money. And we're losing enough money that they're discussing output cuts as prices sag because it doesn't make sense to pay all the people to produce all of the oil when it's just going to be half price or less. Makes no sense. Here's a post-millennial that breaks down better what I just said. Canada has lost $6.2 billion in potential oil revenue due to lack of pipelines, Canadian Taxpayer Federation. And this was a good little breakdown. I will leave it there for you to read. I think I have one that I'm going to read you. Hold on a second. It was the post-millennial one, so I'll read this one. Here we go. The Canadian Taxpayer Federation, CTF, is currently touring throughout Canada to raise awareness on how much potential revenue Canada has lost due to the low value of the Canadian oil. According to a recent report by the group based on statistics provided by the Parliamentary Budget Office, lack of pipeline development has led to a total of $6.2 billion in lost revenue from 2013 to 2018. That sum is going up every day by an estimated $3.6 million. These are funds which can be used for important infrastructure and development projects like hospitals or schools, according to Alberta Director for the CTF, Franco Terrazzano. Taxpayers are losing out on billions of dollars because we can't get pipelines built, and we aren't receiving full value for our oil. That means taxpayers have less money for everything, from hospitals to teachers, and are stuck with a higher tax bill, said Terrazzano. Representatives of CTF have already made stops in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. This is a unique opportunity we have to tell Canadians that no oil and gas doesn't just hurt Alberta and Saskatchewan, it hurts Quebec, New Brunswick, it hurts Ontario, it hurts every single province in our country. No one made a calculation just in terms of how much revenue the government is losing. Every day for the past 5 years, and for the next 5 years, we're seeing that federal government will lose $3.6 million worth of revenue. A related website has been launched to the CTF by the CTF to petition Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to immediately and urgently enable pipeline construction to proceed. The federal government is expected to make a decision on the development of the $4.5 billion Trans Mountain expansion pipeline on June 18. And they chose to go forward with it, construction to start in the summer sometime, and nobody will give a date. I've had people comment saying shovels are in the ground. I live close there, and I hear work happening. Blah blah blah. So maybe they have started work. I don't know, but Justin Trudeau has said before that shovels are in the ground, and that's not true. But in addition to increased food prices and increased or decreased revenue, which is more a provincial thing, but it affects people in Alberta. There's fewer people working. There's fewer money to go around. It's difficult restaurants have gone under because people don't have money to take their family out for dinners, right? Like that happened right after the initial crash, and hopefully Alberta was hoping that Trudeau was going to fix that, but it did not. He did not. Anyway, here is why does Ontario electricity is a problem for people, right? The sky-high prices of Ontario electricity is another big thing that's been dogging both the provincial Liberal government and the federal Liberal government because, well, they're in favor of a lot of the same Liberal policies. And I mean, Mr. Butts, the former principal secretary to Justin Trudeau, was all over Dalton McGuinty's cabinet and Kathleen Wynne until he jumped to Justin Trudeau's cabinet. So it's no wonder that their policies are similar. But Ontario electricity is a problem. Here's a 2017 article talking about from the CBC saying how your hydro bill will rise over the next decade. And that's a scary graph. Like here's the bump that saw Kathleen Wynne removed from office, right? And there's 2017. And come 2021, we're supposed to see a steady and marked increase up to $215, $225 a bill, average monthly hydro bill. Wow, like that's a really big increase. What is projected to happen here? And I haven't gone into it because I'm just trying to kind of give you reasons why maybe Canadians are saying that cost of living is top of mind. Here's, in addition to the food prices, the gas prices, the electricity prices, how about rent and housing affordability? Here's an article, and I'm just going to read it quick. How Toronto's sky-high prices are forcing seniors out of their home. This was November 12th, 2018. This is very sad. Quote, "We don't know if we can afford to live in this neighborhood anymore," says Barry Gilbo. He's talking about Yonge Eglinton in Midtown Toronto, where real estate prices are sky high and getting higher. "We thought we were going to pass away here," adds Jim Goodwin, his longtime neighbor in the provincially designated growth zone. Both will be evicted when their apartment building is demolished to make way for new condominium. And they're not alone. Across Toronto, seniors are being squeezed out of the city's most desirable neighborhoods. Development pressures in such communities have affected tenants in many ways, driving rents higher and fueling gentrification and a renovation craze. These factors create a precarious situation for renters and have a disproportionate impact on seniors, the least mobile population, and one that's expected to make up more than a quarter of the city's population 2 decades from now. Here's another one. Sky-high housing costs have renters considering exodus from GTA, study suggests. This is August 2018, so just before the other one was published. Toronto renters who hope one day to buy a home are contemplating leaving the city in droves based on an increasingly unaffordable real estate market, according to a new study. More than half of renters living in the Greater Toronto area, some 59% are seriously considering moving from the region because there is no chance of affording the kind of home or condominium that would allow them to live comfortably or raise a family, an Angus Reid Institute study shows. The sentiment is shared by 38% of owners as well, the study shows. So, interesting. That's a lot of people who are willing to leave Toronto because there's nowhere to rent, nowhere to buy. You can't raise a family when 100% of your income goes to housing and mortgages, right? Here's Toronto rentals, 8 reasons why Toronto rent is so expensive in 2019. And so when you look at all of the potential reasons for what could be driving people's concerns about the cost of living, an economy performing pretty well, but with all the factors I just laid out, is not pretty good. Sorry, Peter, we disagree. The last story I'm going to leave you with, or the last thread I'll leave you with here, I was talking about Antifa violence, and I said there's been a lot of Antifa violence in Canada, and this gentleman, who is a journalist, went through and has compiled a list of Antifa attacks in Canada. So I will leave the list in the thread, or I'll leave the link in the description below. Have a look. But it's interesting how many there are, and going back as early as 2010 with, hooded people attacking people at the G20, right? Do you remember that? Mr. Miller was not very popular after that, ushering in a Rob Ford majority, 47%. Whew. So, thank you for watching, everybody. Check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca because these prices all come together to make living in Canada really, really expensive. And what are we getting out of that? Well, we're getting a prime minister who's splashing our tax money all over the world and not spending it in Canada while simultaneously telling us that we're racist and somehow need to do better. What? Check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks for watching, everybody.